Okay. Hi there. My name is Stephen Marche. I'm your keynote speaker for the evening. I'm a writer who's been working on AI for a long time. I think I'm supposed to give people just a few moments to arrive. It's just a little after 5. I think we're going to just wait maybe 30, 40 seconds for them to show up. In the meantime, I'd really like to thank Quizlet for having me here today. It's always a gift to be able to talk to teachers. And I think about artificial intelligence, it's especially important to talk to teachers because to me, teachers are the front line of culture. Teachers make people. And at this moment, with the arrival of this technology, that work of humanization is sort of more vital than ever. And I actually think that teachers have quite a bit of power to shape this future. It may not feel like it, but artificial intelligence exists very much at the intersection of technology and society. I mean, certain kinds of AI, namely facial recognition software, basically, I don't think are going to happen in a broad way, at least in democracies, because the public reaction to them won't allow it. Um, how AI is used, how it will come to be, it won't be entirely determined by AI companies or various governments. How AI is used will be determined by people like you, gauging its benefits and its risks in your lives. And your common sense and your understanding of your vocation are an excellent basis, I truly believe, for wrestling with what artificial intelligence can and can't do. Of course, nobody has a choice about whether AI is coming. AI is coming, and we just have to deal with it. Nobody has a choice about that. So I'm here with you today because I wrote this essay here for The Atlantic. Um, and oh, lots of people are showing up. This is very good. Um, I think most people's experience using artificial intelligence began around that month. So it was November 2020, the month ChatGPT was released. ChatGPT holds the record for the fastest growing consumer application of all time. It attained 100 million active monthly users 2 months after launch, and a number of that Facebook took 4 years to reach. So ChatGPT at the time took what was basically a weird little scholarly practice indulged by a handful of weirdos like myself and made it global front page news. So artificial intelligence has become one of those subjects that appears seemingly out of nowhere, blotting out everything else, like the sun rising over the desert. And it comes with a mixture of ludicrous hype and kind of vacuous panic that rushes in to kind of hide people from this new reality. AI is going to transform every industry, or it's going to end the world, or both. And you need to know which now. And meanwhile, I find that accurate answers to really basic questions like what is it, or how does it work, where does it come from, where's it going, tend to be tucked away in pretty dryly technical language that um, that borders on the incomprehensible at times. So I'd like to try and get away from the incomprehensible a little bit. The narrative around AI, particularly after ChatGPT, it went basically in two directions: fear and greed. Those are kind of the natural human responses to any kind of new phenomenon. Like we react like, is this going to kill me? And then the next question is, can I eat it? Um, what I hope to do today is both to allay the kind of fear and maybe dampen the greed a bit, because I don't think either of those perspectives are particularly helpful. And, I have a different point of view from the fear and greed people, mainly because I've been using it longer than others. I mean, I began using artificial intelligence to compose short stories back in 2017. I did that for Wired magazine, and I saw the technology advance through, GPT-2, GPT-3, and so on. And I began using it for other stories and projects until in 2022, Pushkin Industries hired me to write this book, Death of an Author, which is 95% AI generated, and it's the first AI generated novel to be reviewed in the New York Times, which will probably be the first line in my obituary. They called it readable, which I will take. And the truth is that they liked it, but they didn't want to admit that they liked it because nobody wants to admit when something that AI produces is actually any good. Um, it was quite good, but nobody really wanted it to be good, which is an interesting reaction that AI generates. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I wrote this book, just because it gives you, I think, a perspective on what a kind of extreme use of AI might look like. So first, when I was planning this novel, I took copious notes by hand. In the many years that I've been covering this technology, I've yet to find an artificial intelligence that could generate a halfway decent plot. And while the AI used did create interesting side narratives and it offered interesting solutions to plot problems or sequence problems, it was, the plots are subpar when they come out of AI. To generate text, I used ChatGPT. I would put in instructions like write an article in the style of the Toronto Star containing the following information. I would put all that in. It would generate something. I would cut and paste it into pseudo-write, a GPT-based stochastic writing instrument. Pseudo-write has a series of buttons that alter selected text, expand, shorten, rephrase, and there's also a customize button. So you can select text and tell pseudo-write to make it more active or make it more conversational, which I did for almost every page of the book. Then it can also be a prompt like make it more like Hemingway or make it more like Nabokov, make it more like Charles Dickens. Um, and then I used a Cohere, an NLP company out of Canada that I adore, and we've been working on various funny schemes to use AI in linguistic ways, but I trained it to write metaphors, to write good lines for the book. And then I refreshed it until it produced stuff that I could do. So if I'm doing this, 48-year-old man in suit jacket, your students are doing it, right? Like, and your students are going to figure out equally elaborate schemes to create things with AI. I think that's just a fact of life at this point. But I would also point out that that up close, when you use AI the experience is also one which shows you the very limits of these technologies. I mean, there was a strike in Hollywood. Part of it was about AI and that they didn't want the companies to control AI. But the idea that some producer is just going to push a button and have a script pop out is ludicrous. I mean, you do read scripts that could easily be produced by artificial intelligence. I mean, John Wick 4, if somebody told me that was written by a machine, it would not surprise me. But that doesn't necessarily, you can't fire an artificial intelligence. And producers like to have writers around that they can blame for the failures of things. So I don't think AI is going to be any better for the producers than just writers. In fact, I don't think they'll use it at all. In fact, this isn't going to replace writing. It may accelerate it, it may harmonize it, it may give it a different practice, but it's not going to replace anybody. People are still going to need to know why something is well written, and they will need to be taught that, and someone will have to teach them. So the fear of artificial intelligence, I think, isn't super hard to understand. It comes from the movies, right? The fantasies of artificial intelligence, which have been on, in the pop culture space for 200 years, really since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, they're pretty consistent. So machines replace or control people. Basically, that vision hasn't changed much since Frankenstein or Pinocchio, and the modern versions of it are things like Metropolis, Skynet, Her, various Spielberg movies. And they've been so popular because the artificial people and the artificial gods that they imagine play so conveniently into the religious fantasies established for us already, the creation myths and the apocalypse as the species seem to need. So there's also the usual fear that arises when jobs are threatened. And and that happens with, of course, any new technology of any kind. That happened with the automatic shoe maker. It happened with when they started making nails. Human beings didn't have to make nails anymore. A lot of jobs got lost. But with artificial intelligence, I think that comes with an extra fear, and that fear is that human creativity is going to be destroyed. So when Jason Allen's AI generated when he used AI to generate this photograph, the Théâtre d'Opéra Spatial, it won first prize for digital art at the Colorado State Fair. And the reaction was pretty predictable. Théâtre d'opéra spécial wasn't art at all, the critics said, but also somehow it was going to replace art. Art is dead, Allen himself told the New York Times. It's over, AI won, humans lost. Um, Subsequently, this is also an AI generated image by Boris Eldigson, who won the World Photography Organization's Sony Awards for this piece. It was called The Electrician. He then refused the award, and he seems to have changed his mind halfway between submitting it and winning the prize about what he was doing. Um, Even though photography itself, from its very beginning, has been just image manipulation. And that's one thing that I think is really important to recognize is that the fear mongering about art has all been said before, about AI and art, has all been said before about photography. It took almost half a century before photography was recognized as an art form. Baudelaire, the French poet, famously said that photography was the mortal enemy of art. And the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, which was among the first, major American institutions to collect photography, didn't start doing that until 1924. And the anxiety around photography was nearly identical to the fear around creative AI, which was the critique that it was the result of a mere mechanism. I mean, you're just pushing some buttons, right? And it all had to be worked out through the courts. I mean, there were many times when people claimed that photographs were not creative work. It also would have been, I mean, imagine going to someone in the 19th century and saying, like, not only will photographers be artists, but there will also be people who are famous artists. They're famous for being good at being photographed, right? I mean, new media are always very hard to figure out. It took people decades to figure out that films could be used to tell extensive stories, that there could be, the shots had to be developed. And in AI, we're really, really at the very beginning of understanding creativity. But I think we're sort of in the near term, in the short term, I think we're kind of passing by the fear and greed phase of understanding artificial intelligence. I mean, one reason the fear is going away is that the singularity has not come, right? The robot overlords have not come into our houses and taken over everything. And neither have robot gods shown up. And, all the things that we were promised as a terrifying apocalypse just, haven't appeared. But I also think that ordinary people, including students, have started using this technology. And as they've come to use it, they've seen not just its power, but its limitations. Um, and definitely, I think this is also true of students, and it's also true of the universities that are trying and the teachers who are trying to reckon with it. So, how exactly students are using ChatGPT is actually pretty difficult to establish. I mean, for one thing, I probably don't need to tell you, but students lie, right? And they lie about cheating for sure. But not only are they lying to the teachers and to researchers, but they're lying to each other and to themselves about their use of AI. And second, using AI is an emerging practice. So any research done about it, even a few months ago, may well be out of date already. It's just a sort of organic limitation to trying to understand this problem. And then there's, of course, the other question of cultural specificity, where, if you're doing this research about a particular group in a particular country, even a region of the country, that doesn't necessarily apply to other countries in the world or other regions of that world. I mean, this Japanese artist, Rei Kudan, um, she just won the Agutagawa Prize in Japan and openly admitted that 5% of it was 5% of her book was generated by ChatGPT. That would be inconceivable in North America or Europe. There are simply fundamentally distinct notions of authenticity and originality in Japan that are different than they are in, say, Holland or the United States. And that affects all manner of things. It affects copyright law, but it certainly affects how people use artificial intelligence and how it's accepted socially. But I think the best research on how and why students are using ChatGPT is this. Came out last month. Um, it's it's a very extensive study. It's very clear about its methodological limits, which are inherent. Like some of the, like there are limits to how this is done. And just to be clear, They are using digital surveys and other less, definitive methods. But they point to seven factors that drive students to use AI. Seven reasons why students drive to AI. They are the following: time saving and task management, ease of access, aided learning, inseparability of content, technical knowledge of the program. My new favorite phrase of all time: cognitive miserliness of the user. I mean, don't we all just know people who are cognitively miserly? And then peer pressure. But the good news is that only three of these really matter. The rest of these are the really powerful factors: time saving and task management, inseparability of content, and the cognitive miserliness of the user. So the others don't, this study is pretty clear, don't make much of a difference. So ease of access and technical knowledge don't matter much because ChatGPT is free and accessible, and basically doesn't require any technical knowledge. Peer pressure doesn't matter either because literally all of their peers are doing it, and it just doesn't factor into it. So to me, aided learning, which is not one of the driving features, is a very exciting potential pedagogic tool. But the truth is, it requires guidance, it requires frameworks. It needs to be built off of a large language model, whether it's ChatGPT or another model. And the technology probably hasn't had time enough to develop and penetrate enough into the marketplace. I'm not an advertiser for Quizlet, although they are paying me for this talk, but they genuinely have some pretty interesting products in this space, in my opinion. My son, who recently graduated from high school, yeah, I mean, he told me that he used AI for aided learning. I mean, who knows what he really used it for? But I did see him take stacks of practice quizzes his teachers had given it, and then use AI to generate fresh examples to practice on. And there were a bunch of his friends who were using similarly interesting experiments. I think this hasn't quite, that's a real opportunity, I think, in some ways, that just hasn't, that it's going to take a little while to figure out. But even with the three that we're dealing with here, so time saving and task management, inseparability of content, and the cognitive miserliness of the user, these are the good, bad, and ugly of AI. And I'll explain them in order. So time saving and task management is the good. And it's sort of self-evident, I think. I mean, if you've used AI at all, if you've used ChatGPT, you can probably attest to its power. I mean, everyone comes up with their own particular uses. I mean, as a magazine, when I write magazine work, it is unbelievable at doing things like providing timelines when you put in notes. Like, that used to take me a month to do that, to go through all the notes and do that. It does it in an afternoon. Again, I'm not an advertiser, but Quizlet actually has some pretty interesting products for organization of notes and so on. I mean, and specifically for teachers. I mean, it seems very useful to me. I use AI for things like transcription, and it's great. And I think students shouldn't be denied this tool. I think it's powerful. I think it's also not necessarily something that needs to be taught to people. I mean, if you can figure it out yourself by just fooling around on ChatGPT for 10 minutes, really. And to me, the way that we teach time saving and task management is principally by giving tasks and then students figuring out by themselves how to do them. And I don't think AI changes that reality at all. If AI is useful to them in these ways and they figure out how to use it, bless them. That's what I think. Also, I don't think it's the responsibility of any teacher to sort of, solve this problem for them. So that's the good of AI. Let's turn to the ugly, the cognitive miserliness of the user. Um, I mean, don't you just meet kids like that? Like, kids who just don't want to expend the mental effort. They just don't want to give you the energy. I mean, one user in the study, this is a quote, said, "I'm just lazy and ChatGPT saves me time." I mean, he couldn't not have put it more brutally. So, let's not get this twisted. Like, students are going to use AI to avoid doing work that they need to do to learn. And you will have to respond, your administrations will have to respond. And I think making new rules will only be a part of it. And that brings us to the bad of AI, which is inseparability of content. It's not necessarily the bad so much as it's the problem. It's the to me it's the nub of the like when I wrote that piece for The Atlantic about why the college essay is dying, this was the problem that I was predicting: inseparability of content. Um, and it was that's why I wrote this article. And it's just a way of saying that the task assigned, the assignment provided, can be done by ChatGPT in a way that is indecipherable from what a student would make. So if you tell ChatGPT in a way to, investigate the themes of blood and guilt in the minor characters of Macbeth at a grade 12 level for 1,000 words, it will provide something that is more or less indistinguishable from what a good student would have done if they had worked hard on the assignment. And inseparability of content, I think, genuinely is our problems here. Students have always been, lazy, and students have always cheated. But now we're in a world where every student knows that they can complete their assignment either by doing the assignment or by pressing a button. And this will inevitably naturally affect the mentality of the ones who aren't lazy cheaters. It'll just naturally affect everyone's mentality. So I kind of think that if an assignment can be done by ChatGPT, it will be done by ChatGPT. Um, I have some friends whose children are doing summer school, which is online with online papers. That is essentially a ChatGPT fill-in course for them. It's they just take the assignments, go to ChatGPT, put it in, I mean, change a few words and move it in. It's very easy to do. And I think also, it will be incredibly difficult, if not outright impossible, for you to be able to determine whether a work has been done by ChatGPT or not. I mean, I was working on a story about the school board here where they'd made a report that it was very obvious to me had been written by ChatGPT. It like just by you could smell it, right? Like it had like the citations were in the correct order, but they were for works that didn't exist. Things like this, but with the author's name right, but with works that didn't exist. And I was going to write an article about it, but when you publish things in a newspaper, you need to be able to prove beyond any doubt that you're right. So I went to all these companies that I've been working with for a long time, Pseudowrite, Cohere, these large language model companies that I know that I've worked with, and I was like, can you prove to me that this was either done or not done by ChatGPT? And they all said they couldn't. And I will tell you that if they can't, then no program that you can buy will be able to do it either. So I think this brings us to the question of what is to be done. What teachers are doing is actually, I think, being worked out on the ground. I think it's too early to see. The evidence is pretty anecdotal as far as I can tell, like what I've been able to find in studies. I mean, there are certain institutions that are taking, different approaches, but how those approaches work is, has not been established yet. We don't really know what's working and really not working. Some teachers are still giving lengthy writing assignments, but having students come in for meetings at various points, thesis statements, planning, draft, and so on. I have one friend who's gone back to oral exams at university level. I mean, I guess back to the 19th century in some sense. Others are using in-class assignments. I mean, the take-home exam, you're just asking to have it filled in by artificial intelligence. I think most online writing assignments at this point are basically prompt engineering exercises rather than writing assignments. I mean, the problem with all these solutions is that they require more time and imagination on the part of teachers, right? And that's exhausting. And unfortunately, I think until a top-down reevaluation of the nature of these assignments comes in, that's where we're going to be stuck for a while. But I think there's also an organic process which will occur. Whatever you do as teachers, whatever steps your administration take, and I think the existence of artificial intelligence will change what the world values and what you value in your students. And I'd like to propose an analogy. It's a new thought I'm working with as someone who's been dealing with AI for a long time. The new metaphor that I think is apply like after we've gotten past the fear and the greed and so on, what AI really is it's the microwave of language, right? It's everyone's going to have one, everyone's going to use one, but if you go to a restaurant and you're given microwave food, you're going to be upset. If you don't teach people how to microwave food. If you go to somebody's house and they microwave dinner for you, you're not going to feel like you have a friend, right? Like that's not going to pass the dinner party test. So the microwave began as a weird curiosity. An electrical engineer named Percy Spencer noticed that chocolate bars kept melting every time he approached a cavity magnetron. And many decades of research later, and changing the name a few times, it was originally called the Radarange. Corporations figured out how to harness the power of the technology by containing it. The rotating tray helped heat the food more evenly, and they ensured it could survive no load conditions, i.e., it didn't blow up if you accidentally turned it on with nothing in it. This is actually very similar to what OpenAI did with ChatGPT. Everyone knew about the power of AI, but they were able to figure out a way to stop it from falling into horrific racism, but by way of human feedback learning, and that's what made it so powerful, was actually containing its power. The microwave, when first introduced, was the solution to life's problems, right? I mean, much like AI, it's supposed to, it's going to end cooking. No one would have to make food anymore. Like, it would all be handled by the push of a button. You wouldn't have the drudgery of, you know, cutting potatoes or whatever. It would all be handled by this wonderful automatic machine. And it did have an immediate and widespread impact, the microwave. We have fast food chains because of the microwave. I mean, it allowed defrosting at an industrial scale, and it allows the extension of the logistical chains for food the way they'd never been extended before. It made a huge difference in our lives, but it did not end cooking. Right. I mean, it was in fact just another tool, which is, I think, it was what eventually, when you use AI enough, that's what you come to realize. It's just another tool. And in fact, it became clear that the microwave could only do certain things. And those things were not the things that people necessarily wanted. So microwave companies made ads that deliberately, claimed that microwaves could do what they couldn't do, right? And in fact, what happened is that the power of a microwave was harnessed by combining it with traditional forms of cooking, and the convention of microwave food with other heat sources, so that the food didn't feel microwaved. And even then, there was still quite a significant resistance to the microwave, even when it was hidden from sight. Like, the reason In-N-Out Burgers, in this amazing West Coast burger chain, really can't go east, like it can't go, it's not in New York and it's not in all the other places, is because it doesn't use microwaves. Because it needs to be close to reliable suppliers, to get access to the food that it needs, because it won't extend its logistical chains by using microwave. So in AI, there's a theory called Morovich's paradox. And that paradox states that AI is incredibly good at difficult tasks, but incredibly poor at simple tasks. So if you want to have a machine run the traffic system of Tokyo, it can provide answers that no human could ever get near to. And that's the same. If you want to have a machine write something like James Joyce's Ulysses, you can get it to do that. Getting AI to understand what a cow is, really very difficult. The simplest things are the hardest things for AI to do. Tell an interesting story, describe something new, give a thought that is yours. That's when I meant why there's an organic process underway here. What I mean is that I think teachers will start to focus on these small, basic human abilities more than ever before. And it won't be part of a top-down process. Like, it won't be part of an administrative action. It'll just happen naturally. I mean, when I was a boy, there was no spell check, and my wife has mild dyslexia and can't really spell. And so there were many teachers who thought that she was stupid because she couldn't, spell the word those. And now she's the editor-in-chief of Maclean's magazine, Canada's version of the New Yorker. And, still can't spell, but, it doesn't matter because the technology is caught up with it. In a similar way, I think we'll just naturally grow less impressed with the technical facility of written work. Instead, originality and novelty will be at a premium, because you can't actually get a machine to do that. We used to teach students how to write like machines. And now that machines can write, I think we will have to teach them to write like people. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that's actually a great thing. So again, it's a bit like the microwave. Um, Nobody teaches chefs how to microwave food. What they do is they teach how to use microwaves for industrial processes, and they teach how, if you're using a microwave, to cover that fact. And of course, nouvelle cuisine, like the original French avant-garde cuisine, they use microwaves a lot in it. And there will still be like weirdos like me using AI to make creative work. But um, the idea that you should become like teachers of prompt engineering, that's going to be a major field, like I really don't believe that. As someone who has written a novel entirely composed of prompts, the tech is going to change. The tech changes every 6 months, for one thing, and I think the job is to admire and to respect and to respond to the things that retain and demonstrate and present the uniqueness of the humanity of an assignment of work sometimes using the powerful technology and sometimes not. I mean, we live in a world where you can put two pieces of bread with a slice of cheese in a microwave, push a button, and have something come out that you can eat. Or you could make yourself a proper grilled cheese sandwich like a proper human being and eat it, right? And people still make grilled cheese sandwiches even though microwaves have been around forever. I mean, and people still need to be taught how to make grilled cheese sandwiches. You mean, because everyone on earth should know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. They don't necessarily need to be taught how to use a microwave. Um, when I wrote Death of an Author, I used artificial intelligence better than I used it in a way that was very, very conscious and very, very, it was at the limit of what could be done. But I think the reason that I was able to make it produce something good is because I knew what good writing looks like. I knew who to ask pseudo-write to imitate and could articulate why that the machine should imitate those people. And I knew what a polished sentence and a truly finished paragraph are. And so, in short, the traditional values of creative composition, the basics of understanding were entirely alive during that process, like maybe more than just writing a piece. And I don't think that should come as a surprise. Like, what makes a good painting and what makes a good photograph are very different. And that transition required a complete reevaluation of the nature of visual creativity. But what didn't change? Like the value of rigor, the value of understanding form and color, of framing, of the ability to recognize the transience of emotion on a face or a landscape, the need to understand the materials of production and the power of your subjects. None of that is going away, right? None of it will ever go away because the basics are the basics for a reason. Like, they are required to make an intelligent effort. And I think that's why I said at the beginning that the reason I think that teachers will really shape in a very direct way how linguistic artificial intelligence develops. Because, I mean, I don't think AI means that the old values go away. It means that the old values need to be reasserted to make the technology fit for human use, basically. And when I think about what students need, from my understanding of artificial intelligence, as they arrive in this rapidly accelerating world, the thing that, if you really want to use AI properly, you need to know grammar, you need to know syntax, you need to know structure, but you also need to answer, the oldest questions that are perpetually hard to answer, like what makes a good story? What makes a convincing argument? Why should anyone listen to your story or your argument? And I think, for better or for worse, the teachers of the world will be more necessary than ever in this world driven by thinking machines, because they'll need to teach how we're going to think alongside those machines. And that's where the really interesting and exciting work with all of this stuff will come from. So thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to look at the Q&A here. Unless the moderator wants to tell me to do something different, I'll just go straight into the Q&A. There's a Q&A. If anyone has any questions, just ask them there. Okay, what do I got here? Okay, I've got, what resources would you recommend for someone completely new to AI? Well, I would say just get ChatGPT and fool around with it. I think the way everyone comes to very weird uses of it, and I think the best way to understand it is to fool around with it. I had a friend who went bankrupt recently, and he had ChatGPT write the bankruptcy agreement. It can do some pretty sophisticated stuff. Um, I'm always amazed at its ability to answer travel questions. Like, like if you ask it, like, I'm going on a uh, tour of Paris and around the time of the French Open. What should I do? It will give you an unbelievably strong answer. But also I think fooling around with the visual, fooling around with the visual stuff, if you can get access to the film stuff, it's pretty easy to do, and I think that that should show you what to do. Obviously, also there's like Quizlet's program, which are sort of built for teachers, and they're very guided. Like they allow you they show you what you can do with it that might be effective for you in a new way. So that's what I would do. Um, okay, as AI, here's another question that was from Nancy Ruff. Here's a question from Mark Naden. As AI collects more information, it will only become more accurate. How do we combat this and get students to think for themselves? Well, I mean, this is the nub of the question. I mean, for one thing, I don't think AI is actually, one of the things that happens with AI, all of it, like self-driving AI, visual AI, is that it actually tends to reach this moment of plateau. I mean, when I saw GPT-3 for the first time, the leap between between GPT-2 and GPT-3 was immense. I mean, it was the difference between autocorrect on your phone. And I mean, when I put in GPT-3, I said, "Can you finish Coleridge's poem Kubla Khan," which is this great unfinished poem, and an answer, an end to that poem that if you told me that Samuel Taylor Coleridge wrote it, I would believe you. I haven't seen any leaps like that since. I mean, some of the interior researchers tell me there's amazing leaps in mathematics. I tend not to believe anything unless I've seen it, and I haven't seen it. Getting students to think for themselves is actually going to become like that's what you're going to respect. Like the amazing scholarships that I got because I knew how to write an opening paragraph with a thesis sentence at the end of it, and then all that craft that I spent my whole life learning, that's about to become less and less valuable. What's going to become more and more valuable is what actually constitutes an original thought. And I think assignments actually need to be built around that. Like they need, like that's just going to be more and more worthy of respect. I mean, and partly it'll be the assignments, but partly it'll be organic. So, I'm not sure AI is actually going to get that good. I mean, where it is right now is it's like a middling intelligence who knows a little, who knows the medium amount about everything, right? That's hugely useful, but it's actually not the same thing as like as elite knowledge production. Anyway, that's a many answers to that question, but I think getting students to think for themselves is definitely the right approach. Catherine Stevenson asked, what do you mean by transcription? The very annoying process of when I have an interview where it's all been it's on audio, and I used to pay a fortune to have it sent to live people in a third world country to transcribe it. And now I just click a button and it's all done. And that's AI, and it's totally incredible, like life-changing for me. Okay, inseparability of content. This is Susan Daniels' question. The inseparability of content, I mean, this is the term that those researchers are using. Basically, it means that when the students get to the end of their assignment and they've done it themselves, and then they go to ChatGPT and sees what it's done, the content is not different. It's not separable, right? Like they can't tell the difference between what they've done and what a machine has done, and that is even if you're not a cheater, and even if you understand that you should learn to do things yourself, if you can just push a button and have them done, it's almost impossible to resist. And that's why I think inseparability of content is actually the key. I mean, it's sort of like what we were talking about in the question before about originality. It's just another way of phrasing it. Like, what can what are the assignments? What is the evidence that you can see in a student that ChatGPT can't do? That is actually separability. That the content is separable from what ChatGPT can do. And that's the nub. That's why that's the problem to me. The other stuff, cognitive miserliness of the user, we've always been dealing with that, right? Like we've always had students who just don't care, and you know the other stuff, the time savers. I mean, that's good. We should use it, but this is the point that actually requires some conscious thinking through. Um, yeah, and I think that's a process that's going to be underway. I mean, you can read the paper and see their definition of inseparability of content, but that was my reading of it anyway. All right. Oh, we've got another one. Was that? I guess I didn't explain that well enough. It means it just means that the content that ChatGPT produces is not different from what a human would do, and that's in the nature of the assignments. That was from Alyssa we Blumt. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. If I'm not, I apologize. Then we have Ashley Mosfam. Won't tools to detect ChatGPT generated essays eventually be invented? I actually don't think they ever will be. I think there are very, very simple ways. Like if you put something in ChatGPT and then put it in a ChatGPT uh, checker, it'll tell you that it's ChatGPT generated. But if, for example, you change two commas in the whole thing, then it won't. Right. And if you and the students will if you like use it to generate a first draft and then you go through it and change, say, 1 out of 10 words or clean up the nouns or something like that, or it absolutely will not be able to tell at all that it's ChatGPT generated. The you know the thing about artificial intelligence is that it's fundamentally mysterious. No one knows how it works, right? I mean, I have a piece coming out in the New Yorker next month about the inventors of the transformer, which is the great program that all of this is based on. And I asked one of the inventors of it, Noam Shazir, like, where are we in our understanding of artificial intelligence at this point? And he said to me, we're roughly where we were in the 12th century with chemistry. We're in alchemy. So they don't know what's going on in these machines. They don't like it is an opaque system. And so what they figuring out what the difference is between what it generates and what a human generates is actually, I mean, it may literally prove to be impossible. I mean, especially if students are changing small things about it. Even tiny little changes. Like it would not require a sophisticated cheat to beat that. And also more to the point, if it were to get to a disciplinary hearing, like if you were to try to establish that it were ripped off, then you wouldn't have a legal case because it couldn't be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? So that's another problem with it. So there are many AI detectors. They catch, real idiots. Like they catch people who like just generate it and then publish it. But just because something is in an I mean, I put my 95% AI generated book through an an AI detector. It did not discover that it was detected because I put it through 4 or 5 different kinds of artificial intelligence, right? So, I mean, it is. I don't think cheating, capturing cheats on the other side of it, you're not that's not going to work, in my opinion. I've never heard anyone come up with a system where that we're catching the cheats at the end of it is going to be super possible. Now, on the other hand, sometimes ChatGPT does things like, for example, if you one person showed me that they put in, do you think there'll be another civil war in the United States? And it gave them the first page of my book. right? And like it was just it was just simply the first page of my book. If a student does that, that is just simply plagiarism. It's just that they didn't realize the machine was plagiarizing, which would be a very ironic way to be caught for plagiarism. But even slight sophistication around this will make it basically impossible, I think. Um, what else do we get? Students question. This is from Patty Chastain. Why do we need to learn grammar if we have AI? Well, actually, AI is the reason you need to learn grammar. If you want to make a sophisticated prompt, if you want to use this technology in a sophisticated way, you need to understand um, things like parsing trees. And I mean, certainly the inventors of AI all knew their parsing trees very well. They were all linguists with very elaborate educations in this, PhDs in this. And because the thing is, much like with visual AI, linguistic AI responds to the deepest possible um, instructions that you can give it. So to tell a machine to do something, you need to actually be able to know what to instruct it to do. And to do that, you need to know the difference between simple sentences and complex sentences, and compound complex sentences and compound sentences. You need to know, syntactical forms. You need to know like how and the difference between analogies and metaphors and so on. I really think that much like photography, it's the most basic things that you need to know to do photography, like color, right? Like you need to actually have a very elaborate understanding of color theory if you want to be a serious photographer. And I think this is, my creative AI hat. This is not my, just student hat. But like if you want to make interesting creative work with artificial intelligence, you're going to need to know the basics of language in a way that I think actually most educations don't involve anymore. Certainly my children's education didn't involve. Um, okay, here's another one. If you were teaching composition, how would you teach students how to use ChatGPT? Well, I mean, I don't know. Like I'm not a teacher, and I think teaching is a very serious job that should be left um to more serious people than myself and people who are more experienced in it than me. And I think how it's going to be used in is going to have to be worked out by people on the ground. I mean, I think using like sending people out to do even things like reported assignments, I think might start happening. I mean, if I were doing it, that's what I would do. I would say, go somewhere and see something and describe it to me and tell me what you saw, because that ChatGPT can't do that, right? If you go to I don't know, the Royal Horse Show and describe what you see and write about it, like there's no way for that to replicate it in ChatGPT. I obviously think like, you know, in a sense, this is like the pocket calculator of language, right? Like you still need to know how to do math, even though the pocket calculator exists. In fact, the pocket calculator didn't end math, it actually made it much more complex and much richer. And it gave more depth to the ideas that you could pursue. I think, as I said, I think what will happen is the originality of the insight will become much more central to how we gauge composed assignments. It won't be something like write 500 words describing based on this reading assignment. Tell me what you think happened in this reading assignment. I mean, unless you're doing that in class, you're just going to become a filter for what ChatGPT wanted. Um, okay, how can something as subjective as what is well written be taught to 14-year-olds without practice writing independently? It can. I mean, like I don't think just as I said, like everyone needs to learn how to make a grilled cheese sandwich, and that is the same. That is true in language, absolutely. No one who is not capable of understanding um, uh, artificial, understanding where this is going, knows that you're going to need less skill. You're actually going to need more skill. You're going to need to know different approaches to writing well, um, from a bunch of different perspectives. So this is the trick. They're out, we're going to have to tell them, like, you can, you know, put bread and cheese in the microwave and heat it up, but you won't, that's not a grilled cheese sandwich. And also you can make a grilled cheese sandwich and maybe put a pickle on the side just to make things special. You know what I mean? People like that. They feel loved when they have that. But I also think, like, there is something that they know that, like, artificial intelligence is very interesting. It produces a kind of repulsion, much like the microwave. Like, it produces a kind of feeling of emptiness and blandness that people can feel. And they know that they're not being served well by it. And so I honestly think a 14-year-old can understand that there's something in this that's blank, and that needs, that is no replacement for human expression, human thought, human writing, right? And so I think, I think teaching 14-year-olds to do anything, I mean, I couldn't do it for 2 minutes. So, like, I don't, like, I'm not going to advise anyone on how to teach a 14-year-old how to do anything, but I certainly failed with every time I tried to do it in my own life. But on the other hand, I think, the practice of writing well that value is not going away. It really isn't. Um, okay, here's Eric Wintermark. That was from Elizabeth Connor. That was a really good question. Eric Wintermark, how can AI write Ulysses when it can't do novelty or originality? What I just meant by that was that if you want to have, if you want to do something like Ulysses does, with imitate the style of newspaper advertisements for a chapter, imitate the style of, elaborate legal documents, imitate the style of, it's incredible at doing stylistic imitations of the most sophisticated literary analysis possible. I mean, it's better at mimicking the tone of documents than there's no writer alive who comes anywhere close to it. Tell me an interesting story, much harder for it to do. So it can do, my point is, it can do sophistication. It just can't do the most simple things. That's Morovich's paradox, which I think that seems to apply to all artificial intelligence. It was thought up way before there was linguistic artificial intelligence, but it definitely applies to linguistic artificial intelligence. What creative ideas this is from Christine O. It's, what creative ideas for assignments have you heard of that could replace traditional essays? Well, as I said, I mean, I have a friend doing oral exams. I mean, it's a crazy, like, time suck. Like, it takes all the time. I mean, it ruins his end of year. On the other hand, he doesn't have to mark any papers. But I mean, I think people are innovating in this space in a pretty interesting way. I don't think went looking for some kind of general analysis of it, like some kind of, like, here's what teachers are doing to combat this. I couldn't really find anything that was more than anecdotal. But I mean, people are coming up with, either really breaking down assignments into tiny little pieces where you have to like see them actually do it. I mean, that seems to be a common response. Or just giving assignments that, can't be ChatGPT, like, no phones in the classroom, basically. But I think this is a space for pretty broad innovation, right? Like, I think not only are you going to be permitted to essentially reconceive the essay that you ask of students, you're going to be forced to. There's not, like, doing the 1,200 words on, like, discuss Beatrice and her follies and her rhetoric in Much Ado About Nothing, like, and do it at home over the course of 2 weeks. That's just not going to work anymore. So I think creativity is actually going to be required to confront this situation. Um, Here we go. We've got Kevin DeLeon, hello, Topanga Mountain hippie school teacher here. gonna have to look that up afterwards. That sounds pretty fun. How can you improve parent buy-in for students and teachers to use AI? Well, see, I mean, I'm not as you can tell, I'm a big believer in AI. I've been using this stuff since 2017. And I really think it's a magnificent, magical technology. But on the other hand, people still like the pocket calculator is a magnificent technology too, but you need to know how to what 7 times 7 is, and you need to know what 8 times 6 is, and and you shouldn't automate that out. I mean, I think for students, you're not going to have any problem getting by it. Telling them to use it in a responsible way, in a way where they're admitting when they use it. I mean, that is, which I think to me is the heart of responsible use. That's going to be a little trickier. But in Ontario where I live in Canada, if you file a legal document now in the court, you have to stamp that it's guaranteed that it wasn't AI generated, right? Like people are repulsed by this technology. And I think getting over that might take a while. I think it might take 30 years. I mean, I don't think you're going to convince parents that teaching their children how to prompt engineer is valuable. I mean, I don't believe it is. Like I just as I don't think you really need to teach kids how to use a microwave. Like I think it's the substratum of understanding that I think students need. That would be my extremely non-hippie answer. But on the other hand, maybe it's super hippie because I'm saying no machines. But I'm not saying no machines. I'm just saying the wisdom here is outside of the machines, and what the kids need is outside of the machines. Okay, hi there. Have I run out of time, Araz? You're muted.
I'm sorry. Was I muted all
Yeah,
this time? All
yeah.
right. So sorry about that. So yes, we are coming to a close. So I just wanted to pop in and say thank you so much for all of your insight, and thank you to our attendees for such great questions. I loved hearing this talk. I've just been in the backstage taking it all in. So a couple of just quick housekeeping assignments. Let's see. I'm so sorry, Stephen, can I have you stop sharing your screen for a moment so I can throw up just a
Yep.
housekeeping piece that we need?
Is that good?
Okay. Let's see. Play screen share. There we go. Mm. All right, there we go. So all the sweepstakes winners will be announced via email tomorrow. We were hoping to announce our referral sweepstakes today, but we did have a technical issue and we couldn't get those names pulled. So please keep an eye on your inboxes tomorrow for sweepstakes winners and referral sweepstakes winners and attendance sweepstakes winners. And then also you can scan this QR code to take the post-event survey. And once you complete your survey, that's when your PD certificate will appear. So if you have any issues with that, you can email the Unconference email, which is unconference_2024@quizlet.com. But again, as soon as you take your survey, the PD certificate should populate and you can print it, sign it, and take it to your administrators. So again, thank you to everyone, and a special thank you to Stephen for being here and speaking with our audience. And we hope you have a fantastic school year. Bye, everyone.